Taking as reference The Nightmare Before Christmas by Henry Selick and Tim Burton and The Boxtrolls by Leica Films, this critical report is going to be an analysis of the techniques used in these two films and the pros and cons found in traditional stop motion and stop motion with CGI. The base reference of this research is the Book of Basics Animation C4 Stop Motion by Barry Purves, supported by two documentaries found in YouTube, Making the Dance, a look behind the scenes at The Boxtrolls by Leica Studios, and the making of Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, uploaded by BBA Camp Scream. In the 19th century, the illusionist Georges Méliès was filming the streets of Paris when for a few seconds his camera jumped, creating a cut between frames. This cut resulted into what we know today as a stop motion. The difference between a stop-motion scene with a live-action scene, both normally shot at 24 or 25 frames per second, lies in the blur trail that indicates the direction of the movement, called motion blur. In traditional stop-motion, there was no motion blur, so the movement needed to be emphasized on each frame, using techniques like stretching or squashing the puppet. This lack of motion blur in stop-motion was corrected with a technique called go motion, created by Phil Tippett, a famous stop-motion animator. This technique uses a computer that is programmed to move some parts of the puppet during each exposure of a frame. The making of Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas shows how Tim Burton and Henry Selick spent 3 years on the making of this movie and recruited a team of over 100 artists and technicians to finish this film only using traditional handmade stop-motion animation frame by frame. All of them had to create and build hundreds of sets, individual puppet characters and facial expressions for each puppet, since shooting at 24 FPS meant that the character needed to be posed 24 times in 1 second, meaning that 1 minute of finished film would take an entire week of shooting. In this film, they also had to take in consideration ambient effects such as fire, smoke, snow, lightning bolts, shadows and flying objects. These effects were added in post-production with rotoscoping techniques or hand-drawing directly on the physical film a frame at a time. This animation had also the inconvenience of being shot with analog cameras, which put a lot of pressure in the animators. If a single frame had a mistake that could not be corrected in post-production, they had to retake the whole sequence from the beginning. Despite all the years of work and effort that this film required, and according to Kraken Animation, the Arman Book of 3D Animation by Peter Lord and Brian Sibley, The Nightmare Before Christmas was the first stop-motion feature film to receive worldwide distribution. The unique, grotesque and imperfect style of Tim Burton's characters was created by some of the best stop-motion animators in the world, so they could recreate Burton's original cross-hatched style drawing. Nowadays, with the introduction of digital cameras and CGI, animators have less pressure when shooting a stop-motion sequence, since they can preview the animation progress in real time and replace specific frames that have any errors by new corrected frames. Also, taking the Boxtrolls film by Leica Studios as a reference, there are certain elements of a scene like floating hair or cloth that are achieved with the help of CGI. For example, in the dance scene of this movie, first they had to take a real dance scene as reference to see how they moved. Secondly, they had to attach the dress fabric to a joint mesh, which was articulated to let the animators move in and fix in the desired position to take the shots of the sequence. However, since the scene consisted in a room full of dancing characters, and to create an articulated puppet for each one would be costly and time-consuming, they decided to only use traditional stop-motion with the main characters and add the secondary characters with CGI, taking as reference the aesthetic and imperfections of the handmade puppets to make it look more accurate. Moreover, many stop-motion animation plots were restricted by the impossibility to reproduce credible abstract effects such as smoke, water, fire, etc. With CGI, animation plots limit its imagination, since any effect could be added easily with the new 3D and animation software. The combination of both disciplines can permit to preserve the unique aesthetic and creative process of the traditional stop-motion, as well as being a reliable reference point for CGI character modeling, and it can also provide the advantages that the CGI offers with better timing, cheaper budget and limitless reproduction of complicated plots, scenery and characterization.